Welcome to The Big Story, a roundtable featuring members of the AdExchanger editorial team. Every week, we bring you an in-depth discussion of key developments in digital marketing and media.
This episode is sponsored by Withum. Withum is a forward-thinking, technology-driven advisory and accounting firm committed to helping clients be more profitable, efficient, and productive in today's complex business environment. Later in this episode, I'll speak with Melissa Roth, Senior Manager at Withum and Team Leader for Withum's Ad Tech and Digital Media subvertical, about the company's work in the marketing and advertising ecosystem.
On Tuesday, MediaOcean picked up Flash Talking for a cool $500 million. A few years ago, this would be a very, very big deal, kind of like when MediaOcean itself was bought by Vista Equity Partners in 2015 for a reported $720 million. But today, it's just a sign of the times. After so many years of being maligned in the market by investors, and where big acquisitions happen just a few times a year, ad tech is now the belle of the ball. And this deal makes MediaOcean a supersized unicorn, if it decides to file for an IPO anytime soon. We're going to talk about this acquisition today on The Big Story, but first, we're going to run our listeners through the highlights of our special report on identity. This just released piece of AdExchanger research is available in full to our members, and we collected some pretty interesting intel on how the industry is preparing and where it's not preparing for the end of third-party cookies. We also asked what our readers really think of the different flavors of third-party cookie solutions out there and who they think should be doing more to prepare. To read the full report, just click on the membership tab of our website. Joining me today is our associate editor, Tony Riffilato, who interviewed MediaOcean CEO Bill Wise and Flash Talking CEO John Ardone about the acquisition.
Hey, everybody.
And we also have our senior editor, James Hersher, who is going to be interviewing me about the research report.
Well, great to be here. This is a sort of a strange situation for me. I wasn't involved in this report, and Sarah's the expert. So I think we have to start by saying that this report was fielded when the deadline for third-party cookies in Chrome was next year. That's now been pushed back another 18 months or so. So from the responses you received to that original survey, do you think Google made the right call?
So when Google pushed back the deadline, one of the reasons it cited was that it was listening to the industry and that the industry wasn't ready. I do think our research definitely supports that conclusion. For example, we asked how confident our readers felt that there would be satisfactory replacements for 4 different marketing use cases: prospecting, retargeting, attribution, and frequency management. And though about 2/3 of people were somewhat or very confident about solutions for prospecting, that was pretty much the only one of the bunch that got such high marks. Everyone was pretty bleak about the rest of the group. Just 39% had any degree of confidence about replacements for retargeting, and 35% had any degree of confidence about replacements for frequency management or attribution. At the end of the report, we also asked if people thought their advertising would be better, worse, or the same after the loss of the third-party cookie. And I think those results support Google's decision as well. We had the largest percentage, 40%, thought their marketing would be worse. Another quarter thought it would be the same. There were optimists in the bunch who thought it would be better, about 35%. But when we actually asked those respondents why, the caveat was that many of the people in the positive camp weren't bullish because they thought ad performance would be better. They thought the loss of the third-party cookie would create opportunities elsewhere, like for publishers or for growth in audio or CTV.
Yeah, it was interesting just looking through this today, how split the opinions are. Seeing so many of these kind of surveys and reports out in the world. It just sort of seems like a marked difference that on this topic, people are really not sure of what's next.
And yeah, in general, there's a lot of murkiness, a lot of confusion, pretty high write-in rates for I don't know or unsure, which I think, again, kind of supports pushing this back another 18 months.
Well, what third-party alternatives, cookie alternatives, were readers positive about?
So we asked about three main ones. We asked about Google's privacy sandbox. We asked about the use of first party data. And we also asked about email based identifiers. And our survey respondents were the most ambivalent about email based identifiers. 44% of people thought they were less privacy safe than third party cookies. And the same percentage, 44%, thought they were more privacy safe than third party cookies. So here we have, the industry is pretty much pinning its hopes on email based IDs. And we only have half of people in the industry thinking that they're a better solution in terms of privacy compared to third party cookies. So that's a pretty surprising, shocking conclusion. So we did ask people why. And for those that answered no, their biggest concern is that email addresses are PII, or personally identifiable information, and that has regulatory implications. Some of our respondents were also concerned that people don't expect their email addresses to be shared with third parties, or they were concerned about how consumers could voice and opt out. And we also had people who were concerned about the technical side of this and security, like bad actors inserting themselves somewhere between the hashing algorithms and then capturing and unhashing those emails. That was in our write-in responses. And when you looked at actually the positive camp, we had people who were coming to a different conclusion about the same technology. They were praising the ability of email-based identifiers to hash information and make it anonymized and secure. They said it would be easier to manage opt-ins and provide transparency and control with this type of technology. And the unsure camp was kind of in the middle there, as you might expect, where they said it was all in execution. We got the comment, quote, they give users more control, but you have to have clean rooms, or that, quote, it depends on how this information is collected and stored.
Yeah, certainly the Unified ID 2.0, the Trade Desk identity system that seems to rely pretty much entirely on emails to replace third-party cookies, and LiveRamp, their identity link, that's like a big email repository too. I do think that's pretty much where people are pinning their hopes. So it is interesting to see a true split in opinion, whether it's even more private.
Yeah, there's a whole family of solutions. I don't know if family is the right word, but there's a whole bunch of solutions underneath. The Trade Desk and the LiveRamp are the biggest brand names. And I did see in some of the responses, people were definitely more bullish about the brand name identity solutions that are based on email. But then there's really probably, I would say, more than a dozen for sure of them out there. And I think as you kind of lose that brand name recognition, I think that's where people get a little more concerned about scale and adoption, or are a little more doubtful of the technical claims there just because they are smaller companies.
What about some of the other third-party cookie alternatives that were in there? It wasn't just email too, maybe sort of like the first-party data as a category and the privacy sandbox solutions?
Yes. So first-party data is the clear winner in terms of getting the broadest industry support. 73% of our respondents thought first party data and second party data represented a privacy improvement over third party cookies, which is a big deal. Within that, though, again, there are caveats. On the positive side, we have readers share that it's an improvement given that the trade off between the consumer and user and the publisher is more direct and explicit, which I think is a good point. And then on the no camp, there are people who are concerned about how first party data will be used, because there is this ability to stitch together first party data and just follow consumers across the internet, which is kind of recreating the third party cookie. So a few people pointed out that if that's why you're collecting first party data or what you're doing there, then it's not more privacy safe. And there were also some cookie diehards in the mix there who were saying that cookies are anonymous, and anything that's not anonymous can't be a privacy improvement.
What about the privacy sandbox solutions?
If first party data is where marketers are most confident, and if where they're most ambivalent is the use of email addresses. Where they're most confused is about the privacy sandbox. We had 22% of people say they just didn't even know if the privacy sandbox proposals were more privacy safe than third-party cookies. And when I was curious about why people answered no to this question, and the biggest objections we had were with Flock. We had one reader who expressed concern that flocks could still be drilled down to an individual user over time through their dynamic building. And flocks also haven't been approved for testing in Europe due to GDPR concerns. So our readers were also concerned about that. And that was in a number of the write-in responses. And let's not forget that Google's in charge of the privacy sandbox. So there was one person who wrote that they didn't like that, quote, it puts Google in the driver's seat. And a lot of other people expressed similar concerns about Google. That was a big theme in the responses.
Well, Google is often in the driver's seat, and definitely a long list of people, including myself, who's confused about what's going on with the privacy sandbox. Well, who did people call out for not doing enough to prepare here?
Yes. Well, Google rises to the top once again. We asked a pretty provocative question, which is who are the slackers that need to do more to support alternatives for third party cookies? And our readers, 48% of them said that Google Chrome needed to do more, and 46% of them thought that Google's advertising team needed to do more. And we kind of pulled all the browsers, all the walled gardens. We also asked about different groups, and marketers were also at the top, with 46% of people saying that marketers and brands needed to do more. To me, this reflects a bit of the power imbalance that exists between marketers and programmatic. If programmatic hits a speed bump, marketers can just reallocate to TikTok or TV. But everyone in ad tech really needs marketers on board to test these new solutions. On the brand side, there was one marketer who wrote in essentially, hey, you broke it, you fix it. This director wrote, vendors put us in this spot. They better get us out of it or my dollars go elsewhere. And then on the flip side, we got a response from a manager at an ad tech company who wrote, there hasn't been significant marketer testing of unified IDs, and they were frustrated about that.
Yeah, I do feel that in the market, that on the publisher side, there's this real urgency to test their own, first party IDs and assorted IDs. And on the marketer side, it's really just like, Google and ad tech just fix this for me, and I expect to show up next year and for this to work. So yeah, I imagine that is a tough situation. Though it does look like marketers are testing identity solutions, and marketers are preparing, at least just sort of looking at some of the data in the report here.
Totally. So next to first party data, so 70% of people are doing something with first party data. And then the next highest class of responses, there was 66% of our respondents said they were testing new identity resolution solutions, which was pretty big. That right after that was contextual as an FYI for people. And I also was curious about how confident people feel evaluating those solutions. I know as a reporter, there are a lot of claims out there, and it can be really difficult to verify those claims and also find out, does the solution have as much adoption as they claim, or does it really meet those regulatory and privacy standards that a marketer or publisher would want to use that solution? And it turns out that our readers are a pretty smart bunch, and close to 2/3 say they're confident or very confident in their ability to assess these companies, but they definitely called out the murkiness and confusion in these identity providers. Someone said there's a lot of smoke and mirrors in this space right now. They mentioned it's hard to parse. We had another person say it's hard to parse through reality and fact versus unverified claims. Companies are very good at marketing, but have little transparency as to how they produce results, was another response. This person said they have to do a lot of analysis and testing and interrogation for each and every solution. And then also that it's hard to assess scale right now and adoption, which is one big reason for why you'd use a particular solution. You want a lot of publishers on board if you're a marketer, and if you're a publisher, you want a lot of marketers on board. So it's this big chicken and egg problem for a lot of these identity solutions. And until they actually have this adoption, then it's hard to know which ones will actually have long-term value, because you could have a great technical solution, but if you have no adoption, then it's not going to really work long-term. So a lot of that is still really challenging for anyone in the space to evaluate.
What else should people pay attention to in the report? Anything else stick out to you?
Yes. Well, one thing we really wanted to interrogate in this report was the idea that CTV is cookieless, so it doesn't have privacy problems. I've heard that a lot over the past year. I've always found that position to be incredibly short sighted, and it turns out that many of our readers feel the same way. We asked them if they thought identity challenges on browsers and apps would migrate to CTV, and a full 77% of our readers thought that CTV would face identity challenges, including regulation, consumer privacy expectations, or losing features due to identity concerns.
So what were some of the responses from readers?
So we had a few readers respond and say, yes, this will happen, and it will happen faster than what happened on the web and on mobile. And I thought that definitely resonated with me, that when this kind of happens in a different format, it's just going to happen much faster. And because you already have this framework in place, you already have a lot of these privacy laws that have been passed. And a lot of people also called out as the biggest risk to CTV IP addresses. If they get pulled, then there's a lot of identity that's lost in CTV. But that said, there are actually strategic advantages to CTV in terms of identity. The biggest one our readers called out was authentication. So many of the streaming platforms are paid, so there's a billing relationship, or they require an email address to log in. And so that will put CTV in a much stronger place compared to the web, where most people browse sites without logging in.
Yes, and that definitely also helps that, there is a sort of long tail in CTV. It's not such a long tail, but that the user is logged in, is authenticated by like a Roku, say. I don't know where else there really is much of a long tail. Pretty much it's just Roku and Fire TV to a degree.
Yeah, totally. And that authentication it's just such a different place than in the web, where right now we have publishers who now have, I guess, an extra 18 months to develop this whole database of readers that then they can use to target. Whereas, from the start, most CTV streaming platforms have that.
Yeah, and in the web, I think it is for a story I did a briefing with someone from LiveRamp, and they said that they what a good number right now would be for a publisher to have authenticated like 25-30% of its audience. That's that sort of is like the goal for most publishers, and that's a relatively low number compared to like third-party cookies having full penetration into your user base, and
Mm-hmm.
a lot of publishers are still at more like 5-10% right now. So it's a big black hole if that goes away.
And we asked one other question about CTV, which is advertising spend going to migrate to CTV from desktop and mobile due to these identity concerns? And our readers were pretty split on this. We had most of them said that the loss of third-party cookies wouldn't actually have an impact on CTV ad spend. 52% said that, and 48% said that maybe ad spend would migrate there away from desktop and mobile. And I think that I'm also a little bit split myself. I can see both perspectives because I think CTV is really growing organically. There's lots of other reasons that CTV is growing, like the rise in viewership or the decline of linear TV. But that said, probably are some marketers who are going to be reallocating dollars from digital and programmatic to CTV, maybe for those reasons, plus for identity reasons.
Thanks, Sarah. It's an interesting report.
Thanks for interviewing me about that, James. And now we will cut to our ad break. And then when we return, we'll talk about Mediaocean and Flash Talking.
I'm talking with Melissa Roth, Senior Manager at Witham and Team Lead for Witham's Ad Tech and Digital Media Subvertical. Melissa, welcome.
Hey, it's great to be here.
What is Witham, and can you tell us a little bit more about what you do there?
Oh, excellent. So Witham is an advisory, tax, and audit firm. We're the accountants behind the scenes helping companies run smoothly and reach their goals. We do all the traditional things you think of when you hear the word accountant, like income tax preparation, sales tax nexus analysis, and financial statement audits. But we have a lot of other ways outside of the age-old accounting box that we help with at every stage. Things like transfer pricing, IPO readiness, including SPACs, and mergers and acquisitions due diligence, just to name a few. As for me, I'm Melissa Roth, and I've been at Witham for 11 years now. I'm currently a senior manager in our technology and emerging growth services group, and I'm leading our ad tech and digital media sub-niche, working with a variety of ad tech companies. This has really helped me gain an understanding of the industry, which allows us to leverage that knowledge to make working with our team easy and efficient.
All right, great. Now, what kind of companies do you support? Are a lot of them in the ad tech space?
We have a pretty broad range of companies that the firm supports across practically all industries, but we do have an ad tech practice that's specifically part of our technology and emerging growth services group. Our ad tech team focuses on partnering with companies in the ad tech and digital media space, like data management platforms, DSPs, and SSPs, just to name a few examples.
And what was the drive to create a practice that focuses on ad tech?
Well, the advertising industry is extremely complex, and every company is so nuanced in their offerings that it was important to us to build up a team that really understands what's going on in the space. Our team members understand the ecosystem and the flow of information from agency to DSP through the ad exchange and finally the SSP and the publishers. Understanding this complexity not only saves time in the general accounting functions, but creates a deeper relationship where we can truly advise on issues before they even become issues. At the same time, the questions that face these companies are so specific to the world they work in. For example, things like data privacy laws and adapting to the changes implemented by these laws. So in order to really bring value to our clients, we have to be at the forefront of what's going on and really understand the industry trajectory. When acts like the GDPR or more recently the CCPA were put into place, our team was able to respond quickly because of our experience working closely with advertising companies. Ultimately, we created this focus group so we can be in a position to answer the truly challenging questions. I think having someone on your side who understands your business and the world you operate in from the get-go is a really valuable tool to have in your arsenal.
All right, Melissa, thanks so much.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Welcome back to The Big Story. Tony, you got to interview Bill and John post-acquisition. What were they like? What were their spirits?
I did. We spoke to them yesterday, and they were in great spirits. Coming on the heels of a $500 million acquisition deal of Flash Talking. So you'd have to imagine that it's it's really noteworthy for both companies. And this is, I believe, MediaOcean's 11th acquisition over like the past 5.5 years. And CEO Bill Wise said that this is absolutely their largest to date.
And for John Nardone too, with Flash Talking, deal's a long time coming. They've been around for a long time.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So why do you think MediaOcean bought Flash Talking?
I think there were several reasons. I mean, obviously, it gives them gives MediaOcean a competitive edge. If the acquisition of 4C last year put them more squarely in the programmatic space, by all accounts, Flash Talking is going to give them some major inroads into digital and advanced TV advertising. And they've been partners for years. I think they partnered. In 2018, they worked on sort of bringing together ad serving data with MediaOcean's media buying capabilities. And MediaOcean processes $60 billion in TV advertising. And they're the industry's de facto software provider. Bill Wise said they're on track to run more than $100 billion in digital spend this year. And then he said, combining that with Flash Talking, which is the largest independent demand side ad server, it's going to immediately make MediaOcean a leader in CTV, which is the fastest growing part of both of their businesses.
One thing I learned from your interview was that they had just won P&G as a client too. They made sure to drop that part in.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah, that was right. That was actually, I think that's when, they started eyeing a deal. At least that's what they said.
And so they told the Wall Street Journal, not officially, but or maybe they didn't tell. Somehow the Wall Street Journal found out that it was $500 million, the deal price. And so that kind of got my wheels turning, because there was another story saying that MediaOcean was on the market for around 1.4 billion last year. It also bought 4C for $150 million last year. So I'm thinking, okay, this is now a company that's worth over somewhere north of $2 billion. So what do you think MediaOcean's valuation could be?
I mean, well, if Vista was trying to sell them for that price last year, it was at 1.4 billion. That was before they acquired Flash Talking. So I would imagine it would be much higher. And I think one of the reasons why they've been doing all these acquisitions, and one thing that Bill Wise pointed out is, they're not just acquiring Flash Talking; they're acquiring all the companies that Flash Talking made, all the acquisition deals that Flash Talking did over the past several years. And I think for both, they've just been increasing their value proposition. If they're going to go to market and do an IPO.
And being a bigger company is usually good for an IPO.
Yeah, and we spoke to Brian Weezer, Group M's global president of business intelligence, and he said it makes sense. He said it could potentially bolster MediaOcean's value proposition ahead of an IPO, because larger ad tech companies with those diverse revenue streams are more appealing to investors. And Bill Wise made some bold claims. I mean, he said this. This deal would make them larger than some of the other companies that have gone public, like Double Verify, which I think their IPO put them at put the market cap at 4.2 billion, I think. So they're definitely super confident. Yeah, so they're super confident.
And one thing I was noticing too, or thinking about, is, Innovid is a buy-side ad server. They're also kind of going onto the public market. So I wonder, do you think that might have, what does their valuation tell us about Flash Talking?
Well, Innovid was at, what were they valued at? 1.3 billion, and they did a SPAC. So I mean, it just seems like, I don't know. I don't think the deal would have happened if, investor interest was sort of lukewarm at the moment. And I think, I think all this activity is happening. It's not a coincidence. So I'm thinking that, Innovid going ahead, sort of, and all these other ad tech companies is paving the way for these additional IPOs.
And James, you were hot on the Seismic beat a few years ago, which is, I think, one of the other main ad servers out there. So what does the ad server market look like now, post-acquisition of Flash Talking by MediaOcean, and what options do marketers have?
Yeah, well, it's interesting to hear Tony talk about the P&G win for Flash Talking, because that was one of these sort of early signs years ago. Was P&G was the sort of flagship of Seismic, and there were these rumors of P&G testing Flash Talking and other ad servers, and that actually got that sort of like reporting started that eventually led to us breaking the news that Seismic was going to go bankrupt shortly. So yeah, it's sort of come full circle here. After Seismic's ad server business was taken over by Amazon, it did leave Flash Talking as really like the biggest independent player in the space. Although that crown doesn't count for as much anymore, because there isn't much of a space there. There's Thunder, I think it's called, a startup that has a little footprint in independent ad serving. Flash Talking, I think won some of Seismic's business. They definitely had a look at Seismic's books when that fire sale was happening. I remember that, talking to John at the time. So yeah, I think they've grown their standing, and it's been good for them to be, now they could say without Seismic, they really were the clear largest independent ad server. I don't know, if brands need that so much anymore. It makes a lot of sense for MediaOcean, because I do think MediaOcean is sort of like an ad server in that, for TV world and traditional advertising, it sort of is the ledger that a lot of people use. And that's what really the ad server is. It's sort of just like the ledger where the the results are recorded, and if you have any dispute, it's sort of, this is where it should show up. This is where you sort of go to judge a campaign. So that makes sense. That's a very logical add-on. The addition of the DSP business, I think, is interesting too, because that really is, despite processing a ton of TV advertising, Mediaocean isn't a big like ad buyer. I think 4C did a little bit of sort of DSP business, as well as like measurement and analytics and ad verification. But flash talking is definitely like their biggest step into being an ad buyer. That'll be interesting. And if they want to IPO, I think that this part of their business is more attractive, is getting, if you're thinking about like Wall Street investors, they have a really high multiple right now on DSP businesses, partially because of the trade desk, but there are others out there, rather than other categories. Although like a Double Verify, where, flash talking does have services that are sort of like ad viewability and verification and measurement. So I think all of those things are a factor, as you said, Tony.
Although, yeah, Tony, when you interviewed them, though, they kind of said they didn't have a DSP business anymore. Is that right? Or what happened to the DSP business?
Yeah, I think the question was, we had asked whether, with the acquisition of Flash Talking, whether there would now be a preference for them, among brand partners, and what do you say to clients who might be concerned about the neutrality aspect? They both emphasized they were still neutral, they were still independent, and not tied to any supply. Why I said they don't own a DSP, and John, just said, they both also embrace, the broad ecosystem. But they also said there are advantages too with sort of streamlining and integrating their products.
Yeah, that's sort of the private equity backed approach that Mediaocean has, is they buy these companies, they, where there's overlapping roles, they will cut people, they cut down costs quite a bit, make the company more efficient. So yeah, that's no shock. But yeah, like on independence, they're not owned by a media company now, so it's not sort of that side of the independence. But will Mediaocean want to push more of its advertisers? It works with everybody. Can it shuffle them to flash talking in some way, as opposed to the trade desk or any of the other companies that they're work with Mediaocean clients.
And Mediaocean did mention the CTV opportunity in the flash talking acquisition. Shocker. I think every single company that goes public or makes an acquisition has to mention CTV. So what kind of shot do you think it has there, Tony?
It seems like they have a good shot. It seems like it's going to set them up as a major player. CTV, again, is, the fastest growing part of both of their businesses. And John and Bill, emphasized that there's just tremendous synergy there. And apparently that, combined, the platform is going to account for $200 billion in annual media spend. So it looks like they're setting themselves up.
James, anything else you'd add there?
Well, I think the combination of Mediaocean, which is sort of has its roots in older TV advertising, legacy TV, with the flash talking and the programmatic native business, is that in CTV there really is this mix of, it still is like the old broadcasters. A lot of CTV inventory still is sort of IO based and part of the upfronts. So it isn't necessarily a huge hindrance for Mediaocean to be part of that old broadcast world. And now you pick up a little more of the programmatic video chops, and you can straddle that, which I think will be effective for them in CTV.
CTV's glitter remains. And with that, that's all the time we have for this week. So make sure to check out our research report. We love to see our reader support. And again, you can find that on the membership tab of our website. And keep your champagne chilled, because I do not think that this deal is going to be the last one of 2021.
Witham provides the industry expertise and innovative solutions clients need to be in a position of strength. To learn more, you can visit witham.com/adtech.